Hello everybody, John here from the esports department going over tonight's two-game LPL slate, and I can't say it's too exciting, but let's talk about what's going on. It's OMG at plus 475, 0-1 on the season, going up against FPX, minus 850, 0-0 on the season. For these two teams, I went ahead and used last year's stats, even though they're kind of, like I've said in the last couple videos, not super relevant. FPX is mostly the same team. With the change in the top lane from Khan to Nuguri. But OMG is pretty much a completely different team. The stats that are kind of relevant here are their kill per win, death per loss. It's only one series, but we're starting to get some data from the new season. Their one game so far that they won got 18 kills, 15.5 deaths, and their losses combined. So kind of low on the DPL chart is kind of what's relevant there for me, the only number that's kind of relevant at all. They only have one match, so it's not like this is the data that's going to play out over the course of the entire season. But this is a low number for the LPL and kind of worth noting a little bit, considering that FPX is a little bit of a conservative team as well when it comes to those kinds of numbers. So I think maybe the main information that we could glean from this match is that it's probably not the bloodier of the two matches. And I think that's kind of the only super important thing that we can glean. And it's not even super important with the limitedness of the data. FPX should obviously be a pretty big favorite. I think most people's expectations are they're going to be a lot better than OMG. That said, OMG's first matchup against EDG, they played pretty well. They won a game against EDG, an EDG team that I think a lot of us see as being pretty strong. They got a game. They were competitive in the series. We haven't seen FPX yet. If you treat FPX kind of as an unknown quantity, I mean, we know that Nuguri is very good, coming from Damwon here, but FPX had a tough year last year. Their bot lane didn't play particularly well. Doinby had a mediocre season. Tian had a mediocre season. You factor those two things in, maybe you take a shot on OMG, especially the bigger field GPPs, of course. I mean, Cash is pretty straightforward when you have a minus 850 favorite and a minus 1200 favorite or whatever. Cash is kind of straightforward, but for the bigger GPPs, maybe you take a look at OMG in a matchup like this. It's hard to really come up with much else for strategy as far as the bigger GPPs, other than perhaps we take a look at OMG. And looking at the second matchup, Rogue Warriors at plus 700 against TES at minus 1800. I used their stats from the Demacia Cup. In the Demacia Cup, Rogue Warriors was actually about as good or better than TES. That said, they did lose their first matchup of the season fairly convincingly. Top Esports also lost their first matchup of the season to a team that, honestly, I think Rogue Warriors might have lost to a tougher team than Top Esports. So, you know, both teams DPL 16 and 18, so I would expect this to probably be the bloodier of these two matches, though it's hard to say with the new season. But Rogue Warriors, another place where I feel like in the big field GPPs, there's probably some value in Rogue Warriors. They are playing Kellen still as their AD carry, with Zwuji announcing that he's gone for now. They're not trying out Betty. They're going to go with Kellen again. He was pretty bad in the first series, but if they focus the bot lane and get him ahead and get Jackie behind, I mean, that's the thing that can happen. Zhuo was not very good in the last series for Top Esports. Really, though, I mean, it's a two-game slate that has a minus 1800 favorite and a minus 850 favorite. It's really tough to say anything other than Top Esports and FPX should win. In any small field tournament, like very small field, you're probably playing those two. If the fields start to get a little bit larger, I don't recommend playing Top Esports and FPX. I think any combination of those two teams is going to be pretty overcovered in a larger field GPP to the point where it's not even worth playing. I think Rogue Warriors we've all watched the LPL for at least a season now. There's always plenty of upsets in the LPL. The teams they play high variance styles where upsets are always possible. So for me, if I'm playing a big field GPP, I'm not leaving home without Rogue Warriors or OMG in my lineup. I don't know that I'd go far enough as to play Rogue Warriors and OMG, even in the big fields. It seems pretty unlikely that both those teams come through. If you want to spend, one buy-in on an OMG Rogue Warriors lineup, maybe you take a shot at it. It's probably coming top 50 if that happens. But for me, I think I'm not leaving home without one of the two in a big field GPP. In smaller fields, I don't see much reason to mess around with either of them. You just try to find your best build of OMG and FPX and Top Esports. And let's see what the projections have to say about what the best build of those two teams would be, because I think that's the more interesting conversation to have tonight. In the GPPs, I mean, like I say, you put some Rogue Warriors in a lineup, you put some OMG in a lineup. I probably 4-stack OMG or Rogue Warriors in those lineups as well. Go with a heavier stack of the underdogs. I get the feeling if like Rogue Warriors beats Top Esports, their scores are going to be absolutely off the charts. So there's not really much reason to mess around with like a 4 FPX 2 Rogue Warriors. I don't think. For me, it's going to be 4 Rogue Warriors or 4 OMG. If you're going with Top Esports and OMG, I could see some argument for going 4 top with 2 OMG or 3 OMG. That seems fine. But if it's Rogue Warriors in the lineup, I think it's 4 Rogue Warriors for sure. Let's see what the projections think about Top Esports and FPX. They go with a 369 captain, 4 TES, Knight, Jackie Love, and Zhuo, with Nuguri, Tian, and Fun Plus Phoenix team. So that would be the cash lineup that's optimal according to the projections. Is there even a way to fit jungle captains? Let's see. Karsa's cheaper. Are they all cheaper? No. LWX is cheaper. Doinby's cheaper. But Karsa's cheaper as well. So let's try Karsa captain with... You'd have to play Tian still. Let's go the cheaper person at every position. So Doinby's cheaper, Nuguri's cheaper, LWX, and Crisp. But Crisp is a $400 savings. I think LWX was only $200, right? So we'd have to play that. That would leave us $5,300. So $100 short of playing Top Esports team. If we put Fun Plus team down there, it would only give us $100 extra, which wouldn't be enough to upgrade to a Top Esports player anywhere. Done on purpose, of course. Leaves us forced onto top captains. When you're forced onto top captains, the only real argument is, do you take a shot on a support captain in a big field GPP or a slightly larger field GPP? There's probably some argument to take a little bit of a shot at that, given that most people should be in here on a top captain if they're playing these two teams. And I mean, it's pretty unlikely that the supports outscore, I think, especially on these two teams, but I think that's really your only way to differentiate with these guys. If you're in a middle-sized field GPP and you want to try to be interesting with it, I think the only real way you can differentiate is to go that way. What was optimized again? 369 captain with 4 top. Nuguri Tian. That makes some sense. Yeah, it feels like that's a reasonable lineup. Can you change, is there any way to change this, or is this the only version of this build that exists? If you switch over to Karsa, you have 300 left over? No, so yeah, you can do that any spot you want. You can change over to any FPX player that you feel like. You can go down to LWX or whatever and do it that way. It's just not a very exciting slate, guys. There's not even really anything to talk about other kinds of builds you can do. I mean, support captains are really the only thing that you can even do with FPX and Top Esports to try to be different. You could try to go with weird 3-3s, but there's so many combinations of weird 3-3s that you're just spending so much money to try to hit them, and if a 4-2 hits, which is so much more likely, you're just going to burn all your money because it's a 2-game slate. So there would be 500 copies of the winning 4-2 top captain. So if you go 3-3s, you can just burn all $1,500 even if the two teams both win, or all $2,250. Yeah, I just don't think there's really much you can do. If you're going to play OMG, let's see what OMG and TES pops out for us real quick. It likes a Knight Captain 4-3. Generally, even when the projections dictate, I don't like to play these kinds of 3-3s, so I would probably switch this over to Top Esports team, and then probably change Karsa to Aki. Would probably be what I would do. Do it like this. What happens if you want to play FPX and Rogue Warriors? Oh, you can't even get a min-salary cap to line up there. Likes the Kellen captain with Doinby and LWX, which makes sense as well, given Doinby's a pretty high-scoring mid laner as far as average fantasy points. 4 Rogue Warriors makes the most sense to me for sure if you're going to play Rogue Warriors. Yeah, I mean, I hate to even release a piece of content that has so little information, but there's just not much else to say when you have two teams that are such huge favorites like this. I mean, trying to get into the bigger field GPPs maybe with the support captains is like the best piece of advice I can offer you. I would highly recommend not going into the big GPPs and playing top captain, top esports FPX unless you're going to like run trains. If you wanted to take the 4 top esports, like the 4-3-6-9 captain 4-2s, and enter like 10 copies of each or 5 copies of each or whatever, and try to take advantage of the chops by having 5 lineups in there, I could see that being a thing. But I don't think I'd mess around with just running like one of each of those. It doesn't seem very valuable to me. So that's really all I've got for you today, guys. A slightly more interesting slate tomorrow, so we'll come back tomorrow and hopefully have some more interesting stuff to talk about. I'm also excited to start seeing these numbers play out because I'm very interested to see how kill per win and death per losses and stuff start moving along in this league, because the games seem lower scoring than last year in the LPL, so I'm interested to see if that's going to be the case. Until then, though, that's all, guys, and I will talk to everybody later. Have a good one.